Have you ever felt like the system was against you? Until one moment gave you the courage to fight back and rewrite your story. My name is Clara, and at 38 years old, I discovered that the truth could be a weapon until I used it to expose corruption, reclaim my dignity, and create a legacy of change. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other's names. Life was simple, but far from easy. My father worked as a mechanic, and my mother ran a small bakery. Together, they taught me the value of hard work, honesty, and resilience. From an early age, I learned to stand up for what was right, even if it meant going against the grain. But nothing could have prepared me for the battle I would face later in life. After graduating from law school, I moved to the city to pursue my dream of becoming a prosecutor. I wanted to use my skills to fight for justice, to give a voice to those who couldn't speak for themselves. For years, I worked tirelessly, earning a reputation as someone who wouldn't back down, no matter how powerful the opponent. But it wasn't until I took on the case of a lifetime that I truly understood the cost and the power of standing up for what's right. It all started when I received a call from an old friend, Maria. She sounded frantic, her voice trembling as she explained that her brother, Carlos, had been wrongfully convicted of a crime he didn't commit. They framed him, she said, tears choking her words. You're the only one who can help us. At first, I hesitated. Taking on a wrongful conviction case was risky. It required resources, time, and a willingness to challenge the system. But something about Maria's desperation struck a chord deep within me. I agreed to meet with Carlos and review his case. What I found shocked me. Carlos had been accused of embezzling millions from a powerful corporation. The evidence against him seemed overwhelming. Bank statements, emails, and witness testimonies all pointed to his guilt. But as I dug deeper, I uncovered inconsistencies in the prosecution's case. Key documents were missing, timelines didn't add up, and witnesses contradicted themselves under cross-examination. It became clear that Carlos had been set up, determined to uncover the truth. I hired a private investigator to assist me. What we found was even worse than I imagined. The corporation had orchestrated the entire scheme, framing Carlos to cover up their own illegal activities. They had bribed officials, forged documents, and intimidated witnesses to ensure that the blame fell squarely on him. Their actions had destroyed not just Carlos's life, but the lives of countless others who had trusted them. For months, I worked tirelessly, gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses, and building a case strong enough to expose the truth. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I doubted myself, when the weight of the opposition threatened to crush me. Powerful lawyers tried to intimidate me, judges dismissed my arguments, and anonymous threats poured in, warning me to drop the case. But I refused to back down. I reminded myself of why I had started this journey to fight for justice. Not just for Carlos, but for everyone who had been wronged by the system. As the trial unfolded, I watched the corporation's empire crumble. Witnesses came forward, revealing the extent of the corruption. Documents surfaced, proving that the company had engaged in widespread fraud and exploitation. In the end, the court ruled in Carlos's favor, ordering the corporation to pay restitution for the damages they had caused. I used the recovered funds to establish a foundation dedicated to supporting victims of corporate fraud and systemic injustice. I called the foundation Justice Rising, a name that reflected my journey of exposing corruption and empowering others to seek justice. Through the organization, I provided resources, legal assistance, and counseling to individuals affected by similar scandals. I also launched educational programs to teach ethical leadership and accountability, ensuring that future generations would learn from the mistakes of the past. One of the people I helped was Emily, a former employee of the corporation who had been denied severance pay after being laid off. When she came to us, she was struggling to make ends meet, unsure of how to fight back against the powerful forces that had wronged her. Together, we worked to file claims, secure compensation, and rebuild her life. Watching her regain her dignity and confidence reminded me of my own journey and the strength I had discovered within myself. Another individual, James, shared a story eerily similar to Carlos's. His cousin had also been wrongfully convicted, and he had spent years trying to uncover the truth without success. When he learned about Justice Rising, he reached out for support. Together, we helped him navigate the legal system, recover stolen assets, and find closure. His gratitude reinforced my belief that the work we were doing was making a difference not just for individuals, but for society as a whole. As Justice Rising grew, so did my sense of purpose. I realized that Carlos's case wasn't just about exposing wrongdoing. It was about creating accountability and fostering change. By turning my pain into action, I was able to honor the parts of my relationship with Maria and Carlos that mattered most. The lessons I learned about resilience, courage, and the importance of standing up for what's right. But building Justice Rising wasn't without its challenges. There were moments when I questioned whether I was strong enough to carry the weight of so many stories, so much pain. There were times when the memories of the threats and obstacles I faced threatened to overwhelm me, pulling me back into the darkness. But I reminded myself of why I started this journey: to create a better future, not just for myself, but for others. Through the individuals I met, I discovered something profound. Healing isn't a linear process. It's messy, unpredictable, and often painful. But it's also transformative. By sharing our stories, supporting one another, and taking steps toward change, we can reclaim our power and rewrite our narratives. That realization became the foundation of Justice Rising, not just as an organization, but as a movement. As the months turned into years, Justice Rising expanded beyond what I ever imagined. We opened shelters for victims of corporate fraud, partnered with legal aid clinics to provide free services, and launched workshops on financial independence and self-empowerment. I traveled across the country, speaking at conferences and sharing my story to inspire others. Each speech, each workshop, each interaction reminded me of why I started this journey and the impact we could have together. But perhaps the most meaningful part of my work was the connections I formed with the people I helped. They weren't just beneficiaries of Justice Rising, they became my family, my confidants, my source of strength. Their stories taught me that pain, no matter how deep, can be transformed into purpose. One woman, Laura, stood out in particular. She had been trapped in an emotionally abusive marriage for over 2 decades, convinced that she was unworthy of love or independence. When she first came to us, she barely spoke, her eyes filled with fear and shame. Slowly, through therapy and support, she began to open up. She learned to manage her finances, found a job she loved, and eventually moved into her own apartment. The day she handed me a thank you card, tears streaming down her face, I realized that Justice Rising wasn't just changing lives, it was saving them. Of course, there were setbacks along the way. Not every story had a happy ending. Some individuals returned to toxic environments, unable to break free from the cycle of abuse. Others struggled to rebuild their lives, overwhelmed by the weight of their circumstances. Each loss weighed heavily on me. reminding me of the fragility of human resilience. But even in those moments of despair, I held on to hope. Hope that our work was making a difference, even if it wasn't always visible. Hope that every person who walked through our doors would leave stronger than when they arrived. Looking back, I realized that the corporation didn't just leave me a legacy of pain. They gave me the tools to transform it into something meaningful. Their actions forced me to confront truths I might otherwise have avoided, pushing me to grow in ways I never imagined. And while I'll never fully understand why they chose to live the way they did, I've come to accept that their choices don't define me. Instead, they've shaped me into the person I am today, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to make a difference. Through Justice Rising, I've learned that power isn't about control or revenge, it's about creating opportunities for others to thrive. It's about using your pain to fuel positive change, to lift others up when they feel like they can't stand on their own. And it's about recognizing that, no matter how broken you feel, you have the ability to rebuild not just your life, but the lives of those around you. If you're watching this and feeling defeated, remember, your pain doesn't have to define you. You have the power to turn it into purpose, to create something beautiful out of something broken. If this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe for more inspiring stories, and let's rewrite our legacies together.